So hi everybody, welcome back to my channel Law Hero, and today I'm going to talk about dealing with pressure during this pandemic time. And there's been a lot spoken about it, and I've read a lot of articles about how people are coping. And one interesting thing I really find is the need for us to salvage some kind of control in a scenario which is completely outside of our control. So for example, you had one group of people who go into complete control mode when they hear that there's a pandemic, and I would place myself in that group, as in, I'm going to be super productive during this time, I'm going to concentrate on self-development, and I'm going to do whatever I can within my sphere of control. But that's not completely healthy either, because that's disrespecting the fact that ultimately we're all out of control. We're not ever in control, really. It's just a fallacy. So all of that has led me to really consider this time in our history, and that is what it is. It is a time and it is a point in our history, and even though the goalposts are being moved the whole time as to when this whole thing will end, it's still important to have some tools to deal with it during it. And there is a lot of pressure, like this word pressure, to perform at the same level you were while there was no pandemic, which is at odds with the change of environment. So I have a few tips around how to manage it, how to manage pressure, by the way. So pressure in everyday life is inevitable. It's the one thing you need to get the job done. So we'll say if you have a deadline, you're under pressure to meet that deadline. And the other thing as well is, without it, there is no growth. There needs to be some sort of friction between how you are now and how you're going to be in order for there to be growth. And sometimes I talk about this with regards to the metaphor of a muscle, which is contraction or working the muscle, and oscillation, which is backing off, causes growth in the muscle. The problem though is when pressure becomes too much and it interferes with us doing what we're supposed to do. And that can happen if the pressure becomes too much. And some people, and I have definitely felt this certain times when I've been trying to get things done, that I've nearly buckled under the pressure, which is not what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to get you over the finish line. And that will cause a decrease in your performance, which is something you definitely don't want. Then the next question is, so what does pressure feel like? So why is it different to anxiety and stress? So the reason is because it physiologically does feel like anxiety and stress, as in you have your raised heart rate and you have shortness of breath and you might be sweating. But the difference is that pressure is more at different points, so individual points, whereas stress might be an ongoing thing. Same with anxiety. Pressure is more kind of localized depending on kind of projects or scenarios, whereas stress is seen as more as an ongoing response, or anxiety is seen as a kind of future projection or anticipation of something that hasn't happened yet. And yeah, it can make you just want to stay in the one place and not move, and that's not helpful at all, especially if you want to progress in life. But what you have to recognize is that it's not weak to want to just not do anything. This is just your brain's reaction. It's trying to keep you safe, and you just, as long as you recognize it, that's the most important thing. It's why you feel like not moving. It's not your fault. It's an evolutionary thing. So working from home and working at all can be stressful, and there are a few reasons around this, and one is because of competition. Competition can elicit stress, and especially if you're in a competitive work environment where there's targets or there's sales or there's specific marks to be reached, the other problem as well, which is a phenomenon of our society and the way technology has influenced society, is responsiveness. So you can feel pressure to respond because that's the culture now that we're all susceptible to. If I send you a message, I expect a response. What else would you be doing otherwise responding to me? And it's that kind of behaviour that also causes pressure. Other pressures as well that have come from being in Western society is the pressure to progress. If you're not progressing, people think you're regressing. If you're not paying your bills, you're falling behind, you're not actively participating in society, you're not reaching the benchmark which society has put out for you. Or we'll say if you're a woman and you're not having children or you're not getting married, that can put a lot of pressure on you to act so that you conform with society. There's also, pressure to look good and feel good and attend these classes, and that's why people pay for gyms and they don't end up going, because they want to let other people see that they're going to the gym, but they actually don't end up going. It's just the group mentality or the pressure of having to be healthy and looking as if you are being healthy. Then you cave into the pressure and you pay for the membership, but then you just never end up going. I have steps on how to deal with pressure, and because sometimes steps are handy thing to have. The very first step is awareness. So we'll say on any given day you're given a task and you're just noticing physiologically you're completely off, you're jittery, and it's not because of the coffee, it's because you feel that weight on your shoulders. So how I like to deal with this is in a proactive way. So obviously you can't anticipate every single task or every single thing that's going to happen in your day, but we'll say, for example, if you have a meeting at 2:30, at the start of your day you can say, okay, I'm going to put 1 hour aside this morning to prepare for that meeting, and at least I have that in my back pocket when the meeting happens at 2:30, that whatever happens to me between now and then, I may not get a chance before the meeting to review it, so I'm just going to do it first thing in the morning or the night before. That's called prioritizing, and prioritizing is a very, very good discipline or kind of habit to cultivate every morning, just so you're not being reactive. So you can ask yourself, what is essential today? What can be left till tomorrow? That's what prioritizing is. And there's a good saying as well, everybody has time, but everybody has different priorities. So I just kind of alluded to the second step, which is essentialism, and I borrowed this term from Greg McKeown, and he described essentialism as the disciplined pursuit of less, which ensures a buffer in your daily routine to preempt the possibility that something might crop up. So what you do is you say no to as many things as you can, so that there's enough time in every day if something spills over from one project. And it's also recognizing that you don't have to do everything in one day. It's not essential, and that kind of ties into prioritizing, and that wiggle room or that room to breathe will actually make sure you have a better performance, because you always have a bit more time or a bit more space than you need. So it's kind of like a buffer, as he calls it. And a good example of this is when you see time almost slow down when you see top footballers on the ball. So because they have learned to create space and time, because they've practiced so much, they know what's essential in that moment, and they're able to block out spectators, referee, other players, and make effective decisions on the ball. And over time, when you practice essentialism, you learn how to stop sensory shutdown, which is what happens when you're under pressure. So basically, when your heart rate goes up, your cognitive abilities will start to cut off over 100 beats per minute, and the blood won't be going from your brain to your heart. So that's why fitness is so important. It actually increases your decision-making capabilities under pressure. And actually pilots, that's why they have to stay physically fit, because they need their blood pressure to be low, so that when there is a stressful situation, their heart rate doesn't go through the roof and their cognitive abilities aren't cut off. So yeah, for something to be essential, you need to figure out what is essential in your day-to-day in order for you to function. And for some people, this is, eating the right food, doing the right exercise, doing meditation. Those are the essential things in every day which will facilitate you to perform at your best. The third step is sequencing, and this can also be known as a routine. So that every day you follow a routine. That means that you don't forget anything, and a routine could be that you batch certain activities. Like, for example, if you're doing the washing, like washing your clothes, you wash them all at the same time, put away at the same time. That's not just efficient, but it's a sequence, and it means that you don't miss something. The other important thing about sequencing is that you understand the broader sequencing of things, as in that you don't look at the short-term impact of what you're doing, that you look at the longevity of every task, and that stops you getting bogged down in the nitty-gritty. So for example, in your career, that you don't get caught up in some small project, you just see it as part of the long-term goals that you have, which are to be a good lawyer, for example. And this is something that all self-development gurus hark to. They say focus on the process, not the result, or focus on the effort, not the achievement. It's really, really important to take the pressure off while you're doing a task. And then the fourth thing is to be careful what you're telling yourself, using words like never or always. I never do that, I always do that. When you speak like that, it's very, very negative, and the brain is always listening, or the psyche is always listening. So be careful when you use universal words. And yeah, those are my tips. I use them very personally. I think they are very helpful. It's from a lot of research, a lot of books I've read, and yeah, I hope you can kind of get something from that to deal with this pandemic. Look at the longevity. This is only a drop in the ocean in the grander scheme of our lives, and it's great to build resilience. This is a really good time for us to look at ourselves, because it's such an objective leveler to see where we're at. So thanks for tuning in. I hope I was helpful, and see you in the next one.